Welcome, I'm Todd Raffel with Eightfold. We are a talent intelligence platform for the whole employee life cycle. We are not talking so much about artificial intelligence today necessarily. We're talking here about what's on the minds of leaders, companies, and human resources and other talent leaders. And I'm here with Allyn Bailey from Intel. She heads up talent transformation there at Intel, and talent transformation is pretty wide ranging. It can range from recruitment marketing, technology, change management, analytics, just bringing on new ways of doing things and thinking into talent acquisition, talent management. So Allyn, what is on your mind now? What are you thinking about at Intel? You and I were briefly talking about that. You are thinking about engagement of not so much attracting candidates, but engaging the ones you have attracted into that are already a part of your CRM, correct?
Right, absolutely. So, I think that, and this has been something that's been on my mind for a very long time, but I think it's really focused in now. As talent acquisition professionals in the talent acquisition space and recruitment marketing, we have spent a huge amount of time and effort to attract people into our pipelines, and usually from a very transactional perspective, from what is in it for us. How do we move them into, convert them into an application, and then convert them into a job, and then, right? And then if we're being nice about it, we say, okay, let's put a talent community together of all those other people, and we'll send them a newsletter once a month, or maybe an email, right? At the end of the day, there's this really great article that Mark Cuban actually just put out on, I found it on LinkedIn, but I've been seeing similar things being written by other people that says, listen, how your company treats its employees today is going to be the differentiator for whether or not you're able to attract talent in the future. And here's what that means to me. What that means to me is I have 3 million some people who are sitting in my talent attraction database, right? These are people in my CRM who we've built nurturing programs around, who we're trying to engage with, but we need to double down on that effort now and figure out how we tap into helping them connect to the emotion of how Intel is treating its employees, because they're having experiences in their own employee experience today in their own world, their job, their families. They're dealing with this environment, and they're seeing what's going on for themselves. I want them to look at what Intel's doing and be able to recognize it for what it is, see it as something that makes them feel good, right? Like, that's good stuff. I wish I had that. That's what I want. I want that sense of security, right? Because we know emotion drives thought, and that thought then should translate to something like Intel's a great place to work. I may not have we want to work there today, but maybe I want to work there tomorrow. Or if I'm now out of a job in 3 months because of the economy and I'm looking for new opportunities and Intel's innovating in new spaces, I'd like to understand how I fit into that. Yeah. I want to drive those thoughts, and that'll drive their actions. So if we understand the psychology of it, emotion is the fundamental thing that drives all behavior. And right now is a hugely emotional time. How do we tap into that from an employer marketing perspective? And it's about making real authentic connections.
Amen to everything you just said. Companies have gazillions of people in their pipelines, but don't nurture them. They don't segment them by who's in those pipelines. Right. And they don't really strike a lot of emotion. They usually send a newsletter every so often that doesn't necessarily move people. The other thing that you and I and a couple others were tweeting about was you had said, and again, I agree, that other companies are now becoming more open to the fact that people can work remotely. We don't want to belabor remote work, except this is something that you've said is on your mind, and that is you have a lot more competitors potentially, because other companies are going to be more competitive all over the world that were not before, because now they're open to remote work. And you, who were open to having people work anywhere, are now competing with other companies who will be more open to having people work anywhere. And that's having to change your thinking, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And it means that we have to really start thinking about how we work with our business leaders to understand the downstream implications of this. That this is no longer going to be a temporary solution that we're all working from home or working remotely, or that we can figure out ways to operate in this way. This starts to become the new norm, the new expectation. And as that happens, we have to be ready to do this, not just on a every once in a while, or maybe in a special circumstance, we allow people to do this. We have to get much more comfortable with this becoming an okay thing, because for two reasons. I'm not just worried about whether or not the talent I want, I'm competing with others because they may choose to go to a different company. I'm worried about the talent I currently have. Yeah. And that talent now sees opportunity to work in this way, is starting to become comfortable with it. The longer they do it, they're going to see the flexibility and the options around it. And that's going to make them much more likely, I think, to be willing and open to looking at other opportunities with other companies and other places. They're not locked down by those same constraints of their kid's school district or where they bought their house at. Right. And that's a big deal for us. That changes the game.
And you and I were talking about the companies that will be among the losers will be those who try to replicate management practices that were not so great in the first place and make those poor management practices happen remotely. So in other words, loading people up with inflexible schedules and tons of meetings and things, but doing so remotely. That's not going to be a successful strategy. It's combining remote work with flexibility and letting people prosper and work as they do best. You and I both talked about waking up at strange hours and going to sleep at strange hours and making that very effective and working a lot, but over a different schedule than you would have in person.
Right. I mean, I've been very lucky. One of the things that I love about working for Intel is that I have a series of life circumstances that make it important for me to need to work from home. And although that's not been the norm across the company, they've accommodated me to do that because, they're appreciative of talent, and I appreciate that they allow that flexibility. But what that's meant of a decade of doing this is, I'll tell you, it has been a great thing because it's allowed me to work with more global teams, right? My schedule is the oddest schedule on the face of the planet for some people. I work from 4 a.m. till about 8 a.m. I wake up my daughter, I get her to school, I have a cup of coffee with my husband, and then I come back into the office into my home office, and I work here for 4 or 5 hours straight, and then I'll get up and I'll, putter around the house and take the dog for a walk and relax, and then I'll be online sometimes till, midnight. And that's okay. I'm not working more hours. I'm sometimes working smarter hours. I get to work with people around the world because my lifestyle is flexible and allows me to do that. And I think it's allowed me to be more engaged and do more interesting work and to have a more flexible world that works for me. But we start going to these frameworks where everybody starts to work from home and companies think they're just going to start doing the same thing the way they've always done it. A set of stand-up meetings every day, at noon and at 5 and at 4 for the 6 different projects that I work on, does not make for a flexible work environment, right? That doesn't help us. So, yeah.
Beautifully said. Allyn Bailey, who heads up talent transformation at Intel, good luck with everything you're working on, thinking about.
Great. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks.
Good luck, everybody.